And then Trump's going to have to think through habeas corpus. He's going to have to think through Andrew Jackson and Lincoln. I'm bringing in Benjamin right now. I'll explain what they're defending. You know Jackson. They said, hey, Jackson said, hey, they passed it, now go enforce it. Lincoln, in the early days of the Civil War, they couldn't get the troops from the North. He called for 50,000 troops right after Fort Sumter. 50,000 troops from the various states to come to Washington to defend the capital because they were afraid the rebels, the Confederates, might move on D.C. immediately. That battle ended up right outside of D.C. at Manassas. Bull Run to Yankees, Manassas to Confederates. Remember, the Yankees, all name them on the creeks. They were defending in the Confederates on the towns that they were taking, like Antietam or Sharpsburg, Pickham. You had to come through Baltimore. Lincoln had to sneak into the Capitol disguised. Pinkerton had disguised on a midnight train when he got to Baltimore, because Baltimore was essentially a southern city, like Washington was a southern city. They had to sneak him in here, and he went to the Willard Hotel, got it like the red eye, got in overnight from Baltimore, snuck in, and he regretted it the rest of his life because the media mocked him. Totally, he said later, regretted it, doing it, but they felt it had to be done. When he called for the troops to come in, the Baltimore City Council, the rebel forces in that town, the plug uglies, essentially shut the city down, said nothing's going south there on a train. Not going to happen. No troops are going to Washington, D.C., because we kind of are Southern sympathizers. Because in rural Maryland, there was a lot of, and this is where the plot to kill Lincoln later was from from Maryland, right? All those Marylanders, and ran the Surratt. Mary Surratt ran the house here with the Confederate Secret Service, and she was from Maryland. Her old man owned a tavern out there. All Confederate sympathizers. So in 1861, they block it. And so what did Lincoln do? He went and arrested. He arrested the Baltimore, I think the mayor and the city council of Baltimore, and put him in jail. And open up for the troops to come through and essentially save Washington, provide defense, which were the darkest days of the Civil War for them, occurred then because they didn't think any troops were coming. They thought the game might be over when they started. Taney, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who had written the Dred Scott decision, right? This is a beauty. He written the Dred Scott decision, kind of got us in here anyway. He sends over a thing to Lincoln as saying, "Hey, I noticed that that the Baltimore City Council, the mayor, you got him locked up, and you've brought no indictment. And so for habeas corpus, you got to either give me an indictment, or the Baltimore official, federal attorney, U.S. attorney, got to give him an indictment, or you got to let him go." And Lincoln called Hay over. John Hay, the Hay Adams is named after him. He became the Secretary of State, one of the most famous men in the 19th century, young 21-year-old secretary, all secretary and male secretaries. Said, "Yeah, don't write this down, but take this over to him. Just remember what I tell him." Tell him because Tony said if it doesn't happen in 24 hours, I'm going to let him go. Hay goes over to the Chief Justice. "I got a message from the President of the United States." "Oh, young man, what is it?" He says, "The president says if you release the city council and the mayor in 24 hours because of habeas corpus, he's going to put you in jail." Taney didn't say anything else. And I believe the city council and mayor stayed in jail for the duration of the war. Lincoln ran as a warlord, shut down the press, arrested guys in Congress, ran to Canada. He ran as a warlord. You know why? That's the only way he could beat the Confederacy. He had to run as a warlord. You think he used to talk all the time about they were shredding the Constitution. They talked about the expanded powers, the inherent powers of the executive. Right? He and that war cabinet were some of the smartest lawyers in the country. There's a group of really smart lawyers, deal lawyers. They used to talk about the implied powers of the Constitution for Article 2. It's got that scene in the movie Lincoln where he finally had it. He's trying to get the amendments at the end of the war. You know why? They needed these amendments to try to justify just saying Later on, the reason nobody was tried for treason, they didn't think they could win in federal court. Just saying. Just saying. That's why they had to get these done. Lincoln was on the thing, get them done. Get these amendments passed. And you remember, he's horse trading. Guys that come in and want to be post office. Got to give a guy post office. All the guys that got beaten in the election, all these deadbeat congressmen needed something because they could still vote. Because back then it was in March when everything flipped over, or when the president was inaugurated. So he had some time. So, and he bangs the table and finally says, I had enough of this. I'm president of the United States, endowed with virtually unlimited power. That's Lincoln. This is where it's coming to, folks. Write it down in your notebook. On a financial crisis we have, in the beginning of the kinetic phase of the Third World War, the man's trying to bring peace. In a global reordering of commercial relationships, so finally we can stop the madness of us being ripped off and underwriting the security of the people ripping us off. Defense Department, House Armed Services Committee. I know you love spending the money because they're taking you out to the big dinners and they're giving you stipends and you know, and yes, in your districts you got high-paying jobs. God bless them. But at some point in time, we're going to have to hammer the swords into plowshares. It's madness. This system is not simply it's not simply unsustainable because it's unsustainable. At we're going to have a $2.5 trillion deficit this year. This fiscal year, ending September 30th. Write that down in your notebook too. It's unsustainable. It's also insane. It doesn't make any sense. There's no logical connection to this. We're fighting a global trade war because they're all ripping us off, not just on tariffs, but on non-tariff ways they don't let us into the country. And there's no manufacturing here. And we become a total consumer that we have to, it's all federal money. Shutting down the law firms, what it was about, federal money. Shutting down the universities, what's about, federal money. It's all federal money. It's all your money because we just keep the money machine cranked up and eventually can't pay for it. And you underwrite the defense of you essentially our beloved military, of which I served in with pride. And Mo served in pride coming out of West Point. They've tried to turn our military and basically rent-a-cops to the casino. We can't have that happen. That's what they're trying to do. This is an insane system that's not sustainable. And the only people that can make changes are you having President Trump's back. Bensman next.